So we will go ahead and jump back into Ruth. By way of review, last week we talked about kind of the when and why for the book of Ruth. Tonight we'll be talking about the what, so we'll be looking more at the content. But in terms of the when the book was written and why the book was written, we kind of have two main schools of thought on that. And can people remember what those were?
One was to legitimize King David's reign as not having descended from a non-Israelite.
Right? So one is possibly written around the time of David's reign to help support his claim to the throne. And what was the other kind of main school of thought on when and why Ruth might have been written?
To accept a non-Jews as members of the community, or I guess to even more to acceptance of other people besides just the direct descendants of Jacob. That there
Right.
were other
So
people who could be part of the fold.
right. So marriage between Israelites and non-Israelites. It was kind of written in support of that to say, if an ancestor of David could be married to a non-Israelite, and this woman was kind of the ideal proselyte or convert, who's to say that we cannot do that today? So possibly written after the return from the Babylonian exile, possibly in response to people like Ezra and Nehemiah, who were very opposed to people marrying outside of Israel. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to read through the book. Again, only 4 chapters, 3 pages, if you have one of the Bibles from the library. And as we do, I'm going to invite you to listen for 3 themes and jot down places where you see these themes at work. The first is faithful people praying and God answering those prayers. So if you see an instance where people are praying and you see an instance where God answers the prayer, make note of that. The second theme is God's care for people in need. If you see instances of God's care for people in need, make note of that. And the final one is the way God works through what looked like normal everyday events. So we're going to be looking for those 3 things as we read. So let us go ahead and begin. Carol, I'm going to invite you to read chapter 1, 1 through 5. Mark chapter 1, 6 through 14. And Tom chapter 1, 15 through 22. And then we'll get into chapter 2 after that.
Days when judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to live in the country of Moab. He and his wife and 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with 2 sons. These 2 Moabite wives, the name of one was Orpah, and the other of Ruth. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so that the woman who was left without her 2 sons and her late husband.
Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law. Daughters-in-law from the country of Moab. For she had learned in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living. She and her two daughters-in-law, and they went on their way back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
And so she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. When they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman said, Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Call me no longer Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned together with Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, who came back with her from the country of Moab. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest.
All right. So, Nick, I'm going to ask you to read chapter 2, 1 through 7. I will take chapter 2, 8 through 13. Carol, if you can then share with us 14 through 16. And Mark, 17 through 23.
Now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a prominent rich man of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of the grain behind someone in whose side I may find favor." She said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she went. She came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the family of Elimelech. Just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, "To whom does this young woman belong?" The servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers. So she came, and she's been in her feet from early this morning until now, without resting even for a moment.
Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." Then she fell prostrate and with her face to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother in law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Then she said, "May I continue to find favor in your sight, my lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly toward your servant, even though I am not one of your servants."
At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some of this bread and dip your morsel into the sour wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain. She ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, "Let her glean even among the standing sheaves, and do not reproach her. You must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles, and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her."
So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She picked it up and came into the town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned. Then she took out and gave her what was left over, after she herself had been satisfied. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our nearest kin." Then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay close by my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is better, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, otherwise you might be bothered in another field." So she stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and the wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
So as we get into chapter 3, Tom, I'm going to have you give us verses 1 through 5, Nick 6 through 13, and then I will finish off the chapter with 14 through 18.
Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you so that it may be well with you. Now here is our kinsman Boaz, with whose young women you have been working. See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now wash and anoint yourself and put on your best clothes and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." She said to her, "All that you tell me, I will do."
So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in contented mood, He went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet, and they lay down. At midnight the man startled and turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I'm Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over here, your servant, for you are next of kin." He did. He said, may you be blessed, Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than your first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And then, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. For all the assembly of my people, I know that you are a worthy woman. But now, though it is true that I'm a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related to you. Remain this night, and in the morning he will act as your next king for you. Good, let him do it. If he is not willing to act as the next of kin for you, as the Lord lives, I will act as the next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning.
So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another, for he said, "It must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." Then he said, "Bring out the cloak you are wearing and hold it out." So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. Then he went into the city. She came back to her mother-in-law, who said, "How did things go with you, my daughter?" Then she said to her all that the man had done for her, saying, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, 'Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." So in chapter 4, Carol, let me have you give us 1 through 6, Mark 7 through 12, and Tom 13 through 22. And Carol, will need you to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there than the next of kin of Boaz, of whom Boaz had spoken, came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over, friend, sit down here." And he went over and he sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. He then said to the next of kin, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Amalek. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the would be you to tell of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me so that I may know. For there is no one prior to you to redeem it. And I will come after you. So he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you are also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance. At this, the next of kin said, I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it.
Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the next of kin said to Boaz, "Acquire it for yourself," he took off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his kindred and from the gate of his native place. Today you are witnesses." Then all the people who were at the gate, along with the elders, said, "We are witnesses. But may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you produce children in Ephrathah and bestow a name in Bethlehem. And through the children that the Lord will give you by this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah."
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, the Lord made her conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without next of kin, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. The women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the descendants of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron, Hezron of Ram, Ram of Amminadab, Amminadab of Nahshon, Nahshon of Salmon, Salmon of Boaz, Boaz of Obed, Obed of Jesse, and Jesse of David.
All right. So, like I said last week, we have read a whole book of the Bible right here tonight together. So, as we read, I was asking that you jot down anytime you saw some of these themes emerge. The first is faithful people praying to God and God answering those prayers. Did we find any instances of that theme?
I only found one
Okay.
of that, and it was right near the end here in the 4th chapter, chapter 4, verses 11 and 12, when the people were at the gate and they, prayed that, made the prayer at that point.
Pray for God to help Ruth produce children.
Yes.
And then a couple verses later, she produces children. Okay, yep, that's a prayer and God's answer to prayer. So yeah, absolutely, we see it there. There are some other places that we see that in Ruth. Did anybody pick up on those?
I think the reference also on Tom's going a little bit further, it really caught me, was bestow a name in Bethlehem.
Yeah, because of course that's the city of David.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So that kind of caught my eye there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, reading it as we do through the lens of Christ, make a name in Bethlehem has additional layers of meaning as we read it as well. So yeah, I guess you could even say that that is a prayer that is fulfilled. All the way back in chapter 1, Naomi prays, "May the Lord grant that you find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." And And is that prayer fulfilled for Ruth?
Yes.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
verse was that?
Chapter 1, verse 9. And in chapter 2,
But we don't know about, we know that Ruth found it. We don't know about the other one, right?
right, yes, we do not know what came of Orpah, but we do know that the prayer was answered for Ruth.
I
In
guess
chapter-
Orpah got security. She ended up being a gazillionaire in SH.
Right, yep. She came back to get paid, for sure. Um,
I just discovered chapter 2, verse 12.
say more.
May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and that you may have full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to refuge.
So yeah, prayer that Ruth is rewarded and that she may find refuge. And does that happen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can jump right to chapter 4, verse 10. She becomes the wife of Boaz, who is a well-to-do family member, and maintain his relatives' inheritance. So Boaz kind of becomes the answer to his own prayer. So yeah, we definitely see prayer and God's answer to prayer. Just make a note here for myself. What do we see in terms of God's care for people in need as we read the story?
While letting Ruth glean in Boaz's field.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that is a way that God cares for the people in need, by providing that teaching in the law, because that is one of the commandments. And when you harvest your field, you leave some of the grain for people who don't have land. So God is at work through the commandments of the law there. Absolutely.
And I think Naomi having Ruth to stay by her side through all of this and all
Yeah.
the things subsequently.
Yeah. Naomi, well, Ruth and Naomi both are widows, and Naomi has lost her sons, and Ruth cares for her. Ruth provides for her. She goes out and gleans so that Naomi can have something to eat. So God cares for Naomi through Ruth. And I think to an extent, God cares for Ruth through Naomi, who says, by the way, we have this relative who has a field, go there first. And then she comes back and says, yep, I was able to glean and I met him and he's a great guy. And Naomi says, okay, we're going to take it to the next level. This is what I need you to do. So I think Ruth and Naomi, God works through them to care for one another, certainly. I would even jump further back to chapter 1, that they've gone to Moab, and then the Lord considered his people and gave them food. So the famine ends. So I think even at the very beginning, we can see God considering his people, God coming to care for the people who are in need.
And I guess chapter 3, 16 and 17, when Ruth went back with 6 measures of barley.
Yeah.
Brought him back to Naomi.
Yeah, so Boaz is at work there, or God is at work in Boaz there. See, this is why I like studying together, because I went through and was looking for that theme, and I missed that. So This is why, again, why it matters that we read together.
And then Boaz marrying Ruth and providing children.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then what do we see in the book in terms of God working through what looked like normal events? Things where, were we to look at them kind of without the lens of faith, we'd say, yeah, that sort of thing just kind of happens. But now as we read it and see, no, this is part of Scripture. God is at work in it somewhere. Where do we see that in Ruth?
Chapter 2, verses 22 through 23, where again she goes out with the young women of Boaz, gleaning the barley and the harvest wheats, which was a normal sort of thing, to go after the leftovers, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so of course that is her second trip to this field. And I would say earlier in chapter 2, verse 4, just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, to whom does this young woman belong? So, it seems like he just happens to come from town out into the field, but yet he comes at the moment when he sees Ruth out there. So yeah, Ruth and Boaz meeting and that relationship developing seems like, it just kind of happened, but I don't think so.
What about the famine at the beginning of chapter 1? That's a normal event.
Yeah, I would say the whole chain of events that brings Ruth to Bethlehem. How does she end up in Bethlehem? Well, there's famine in Bethlehem, so Naomi's family moves to Moab. People die in Moab. They hear that there is food in Bethlehem again, and she goes back with her mother-in-law. Kind of similar to in Luke's gospel. How do they, Mary and Joseph aren't from Bethlehem. They're from Nazareth. How do they end up in Bethlehem for Jesus being born there? Well, they call for a census, and everybody has to get up and move because of the census. So again, these things that maybe you'd look at and go, that's just the sort of thing that happens, and yet they end up in Bethlehem, the city of David. So again, things that look kind of ordinary every day, and God's at work in it.
I would say chapter 4, verse 10, where Boaz acquires Ruth, the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, maintaining and then does that to maintain the dead man's name on the inheritance. So that was part of the normal way of doing things, the usual way of doing things at that time in that part of the world. So it's a normal event where you could say God's working through that.
Right. Well, and even Ruth and Boaz having children, it seems like a normal event, but the number of things that had to happen to bring those two together, again, is remarkable.
The one thing that kind of, I do have a question on something though, because initially, I guess there was another person who was closer as kindred who had first rights, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
He declined because it would put his own inheritance in jeopardy. What was the deal? So if he took her on and had a son, then would that mean that all of his inheritance would go to his firstborn, which would be Ruth's son?
I
That's
have
why he
not
didn't do it?
I have not even the faintest clue what is going on there with the other family member and saying, you know, I can't accept this because it'll upend other things that I have going. Yeah, I have no clue. But there again, that's the sort of thing. Maybe it just looks like a normal event. He says, you know, it is actually not in my interest to receive this property and this wife, and therefore it's going to go to Boaz. Yeah, I have no clue how that works.
In my study note, in a study by what it says, possibly he fears that if he has a son by her, and if that son is his only surviving heir, his own property will transfer to the family of Elimelech. See the note in Genesis 38:9. It says,
Okay.
in that case, his risk was no greater than that assumed by Boaz. This relative's refusal to assume the guardian redeemer's role highlights the kindness and generosity of Boaz toward the two widows.
All right. Well, that'll preach.
So
My only thought is they're all somehow related already. So I'm not entirely sure what impact it would have, but yeah, and the fact I'm more convinced with the thought of it highlights Boaz's kindness towards Ruth. That jives with me a little more.
That was that's a big that's a big that's a big risk, because let's say, you know, after that, you know, with his other wives or whatever, he only has daughters, or maybe he has his other sons that don't survive, then he would lose everything, or everything would go to another family. Different rules.
What about Jesus becoming a lineage of Ruth? That's like a normal event.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, usually when we've looked at a book out of the Old Testament, we have looked a little bit at the New Testament reception, kind of how the New Testament accepts that and how it uses the story. And to the best of my knowledge, the only mention of Ruth in the New Testament is in the genealogy that Matthew gives. Matthew gives this genealogy going all the way back to Abraham, and he mentions 3 women. He mentions Rahab, Tamar, and Ruth. 3 Gentiles who happen to enter into the story. But after that, we get nothing else on Ruth in the New Testament.
And Tamar is mentioned here in chapter 4.
So what are our impressions of Ruth? What surprised you, or what caught your imagination as we read through this book?
Her loyalty to Naomi through thick and thin.
God works his plan.
Yeah, for sure. Did anything in Ruth either kind of serve to build up your faith or kind of challenge your faith?
I guess I'm always amazed at how God works things, you know? He finds a way and just uses ordinary folks to do what needs to be done.
I had a professor in college who taught Old Testament, and he said one of the things you learn from the Old Testament is God works through a variety of strange individuals.
Hmm.
It's just as true now.
Yes.
And it's all piecemeal too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like all these things have to fall into place. You know, he doesn't just fix it or present the situation. It's very it's very complicated. You know, it's not happenstance. It's you know it's what's the word I'm trying to look for? It's it's not cut and dried. Yet to
Yeah.
believe it, you have to have faith because the famine, you know, going from one place moving to another, you know, going to a certain field. I mean, did you know Naomi know exactly what her did she have this plan when they were going back? No, she didn't even think she'd have, you know, Ruth with her. She tried not to. So it all
Yeah, and I
come
think,
about.
you know, and one of the things that challenges me to think about is the extent to which God is involved in, you know, is every single thing that happens what God wants? Does God plan every single thing? And I would lean towards, and this is just my take on it, you know, for what it's worth, I would lean towards no, because I think that is part of our being made in God's image is we do have that freedom of choice. Um, just because God knows what we are going to choose doesn't necessarily mean God has made the choice for us. But I do think God has an ability to co-opt those things, to co-opt those choices and use them to further what God is going to do. Um, yeah, I think that's something I think about with this. You know, did God, you know, to what extent did God plan this out, or to what extent did God say, okay, you know what, I can work with this. I can co-opt this and redeem this. I can make something happen from this.
Well, I'm still a little bit confused, which some people would say that's not unusual, but at the very end, um, you know, on chat for the last two verses.
Mm-hmm.
So Naomi took the child and took him to her bosom and became the nurse, and then the women of the neighborhood gave him the name, and they said a son had been born to Naomi, not Ruth. And then even in that last paragraph there, 18 through 21, on a in the Bible I'm looking at in the commentary, the descendants, it is unclear whether this genealogy belonged originally to the text of Ruth or was appended later. So what I'm kind of thinking here was, at the time of David, were they saying that um, Obed came from Naomi and not Ruth? And then later on, 18 through 21 were added. Is that possible?
It is certainly possible that the text was, kind of edited or changed along the way. I don't know enough about the kind of the genealogy and the customs of how they discern who belongs to who.
But I guess my point is that Naomi was an Israelite, was she not, or was she a Moabite?
Mhm.
Yeah, so then it would have been all good for David to have said,
Right.
Jesse
Exactly.
came from Naomi, not Ruth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So having that detail in there that, as far as the people of Bethlehem were concerned, Obed is actually one of Naomi's descendants.
Right.
On the other hand, Boaz is also a Jew, so they could have written the genealogy through Boaz as well, but leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Then they would have to leave Naomi out, and then that's a woman they're leaving out, maybe, huh?
But feel like it would be hard, after having just told the whole story of these two women, to sideline one of them at the end. Not to say it wouldn't happen, to just be extra weird, I guess.
Yeah, and Boaz was a Jew, so there'd be no issue there.
Mm-hmm.
The issue was Ruth.
Well, and if it is, if part of the reason this book was written was to help legitimize David's reign, you could very easily see members of Saul's family or members of some other family trying to find any reason they could to say, well, David and his family can't be king, so we should be instead. And you see that with politicians and people running for office now. People will dig up whatever dirt they can find in the hope that it will get people to say, you know what, we really shouldn't vote for this person because look what they've done. So yeah, if it solves the problem by saying, well, actually, according to the townspeople, he was Naomi's descendant, who's a good Bethlehemite, and the father is Boaz, who's a good Bethlehemite. No issue, no problem.
Right. Even the dog agreed. Even the dog
does.
agrees with me. Now I
Yeah.
really feel vindicated. Good dog.
I was going to say, I can't top that.
Was it possible for Ruth to become a Jew after she married Boaz? Is that like, can anybody become a Jew?
As far as I know, yes. How exactly that would have happened at this stage in the history, I'm not sure, but yeah, I see no reason why not. And I think maybe that is that question of, could Ruth become a Jew? Could Ruth become an Israelite? I think for her to say, your gods will be my gods, or your God will be my God, that's she's well on her way with that, I would think. And maybe part of it is to show that, she displays so many qualities that you would want to see in one of your people, that loyalty. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Another thing that challenged me was the lifestyle they were in. Like in the field for lunch, they eat parched grain.
They were not living a very luxurious lifestyle here.
and sleeping in the field.
Yeah, I mean, when it's harvest time, you got to work sun up to sundown and don't want to lose time going back and forth into town because you only have a narrow window to get the harvest in, and you get a bad storm that comes in the middle of the harvest and you've lost a bunch of food. So yeah, that intensity is real.
The house of Perez, that's kind of, I've never heard that name mentioned before in the earlier scriptures. Where did that kind of come from?
Perez is the son of Judah, and I'm trying to remember. I do remember that Tamar is definitely the victim of some abuse in that story. I think at the hands of Onan. I don't remember precisely, but Perez is the descendant of uh, Judah.
In chapter 4, when Boaz brings the next of kin and offers the land of Naomi to him, without Naomi's permission, there's nothing written down here that he went to Naomi and said, "Can I sell your land?"
Yeah, maybe there was a conversation between Naomi and Boaz that's not recorded here, or maybe Boaz was just a prominent person in the community who kind of would take responsibility for that sort of thing. You know, Naomi is selling the parcel of land. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. But yeah, it just kind of comes up there that, oh yeah, by the way, she's going to sell this. So, kind of it would go to somebody in the family first. I guess I would not make a very good Israelite. I don't know how these things work.
If the next of kin had gone along with the proposal and married Ruth, would the plan have changed that down the road that much? It's still the Jewish genealogy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's still somehow related to Naomi. But yeah, I have no idea. I have no doubt that God would have made some things happen to get things moving the way God wanted. But yeah, the story might have been different.
Of course, another thing that's challenging is extraordinary generosity of Boaz. All of a sudden, he takes care of Ruth as soon as she finds out she's in the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is absolutely one of the things we are supposed to pick up on, is that Boaz seems to be a person of extraordinary character in the way he shows compassion and the way that he shows this kind of generosity, that Ruth shows that kind of generosity of spirit toward Naomi. Yet at the same time, Ruth is the beneficiary of some of these laws that are there to care for the least among us. So, these two widows kind of living on the margins of the town, they're able to eat because of these laws, and yet they are still ancestors of King David. So even people who give rise to royalty sometimes are in need of mercy, sometimes are in need of charity. So I think that's also an interesting thing to ponder. Kind of tells us a little bit about, these are the kind of people that David came from. Generous, caring, but at the same time, people in need. So, unless folks have some more thoughts on Ruth, I just want to share with you. We will gather next week, just for a brief time, because I was thinking Ruth might end up taking us 3 weeks. So I don't have anything planned for next week, but I do want to share with you some information on some spiritual growth activities that we are planning for 2026. So I just want to take a little bit of time to share that with you, start getting that information out for folks, just to let you know some of what we have coming in the next year. So please join us for that. And anything else on people's hearts?
What will we be studying? I'm assuming the following week is the night before Thanksgiving, and we probably won't be meeting.
That is correct. When we come back after Thanksgiving, we are going to start a series on how we read and interpret parables.
It'd be
So
interesting.
we will be spending a lot of time with parables.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent. Would someone be willing to pray the Lord's Prayer on behalf of the group?
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
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 Well, thank you, everybody, for your time and your engagement, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yeah.
Good night,
See you
everybody.
tomorrow.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.